Warning. This episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lisa Cypers Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lisa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lisa Cypers Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us on today's show, where you will learn about outer space and inner worlds. My first guest is Professor Heino Falcke. He is a professor of astroparticle physics and radio astronomy who seeks the vastness of the sky, believes in divine reason, and in a reasonable God. Stupid questions are often his best answer. He is blessed with Rhenish humor and East Prussian stubbornness. Falcke is a professor at Radboud University in, I'm going to hopefully say this right, Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and a visiting
It's Radboud University Nijmegen. That was pretty close, actually.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you chimed in to straighten me out, to get it right. And you're a visiting scientist at the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy in Bonn. In his free time, and this is what really interests me, Professor Falcke confides, baptizes, buries, and preaches as an ordained preacher in the evangelical church in the Rhineland. And I am super excited to have you as my guest today. Really, I know this is so cool.
Thank you.
It's unknown territory to me, and like you said, to all of us.
Well, nobody has ever been out there, at least at the vast distances that we're talking about today. And so we just have a little glimpse of it, and I hope I can relay a little bit of the fascination and the beauty we find out there in the cosmos. So
define for us lay people having a good listen here, what is a black hole?
Right. So this is one of my key topics to work on. We try to visualize and actually image a black hole for the first time and succeeded. But black holes started out as a perfectly theoretical, abstract idea where a huge amount of matter is compressed into tiny little point. It would, a black hole would happen if you compress the entire Earth into something that's the size of your thumbnail or your thumb, actually. So, a lot of matter in a small area, and thereby creating a huge amount of attraction, such a strong attraction that everything will be sucked towards that black hole that comes, everything that comes close to it, even light would disappear. And black holes are so strong that once you cross this virtual boundary that we call the event horizon, once you cross that frontier, nothing will ever come back. No light will come back, no information. If you go inside, you could actually survive that if it's a really big black hole, but you would not be able to tell what you see inside. So black holes are not really happy places. They are really the places of ultimate destruction. And also frontiers of our knowledge, because there's something in our universe that exists, but we cannot investigate the inside of, fundamentally not. And that's something that bugs physicists for a long time and is one of the biggest conundrums and puzzles in current astrophysics, what's happening at these black holes. And I think they also stimulate a lot of fantasy, and rightly so to some degree, because they are monsters. They're, I called them at, the press conference once, they look like the gates of hell.
Ooh, that's a little scary.
Yes. Still, you can't be happy thinking about them because we are at a safe distance and they're so far away that we can look at these monsters and feel pretty safe.
Well, The idea of the black hole existing somewhere out there in space and sort of the metaphor that we use for our own personal exploration, albeit spiritual quest. I mean, the metaphor works there as well, right?
Yeah, because, if you think about black holes, they are literally the end of space and time. And if you think about astrophysics, we have, the beginning of space and time, the Big Bang, and in between we have a beautiful universe with stars, planets, colorful nebula, galaxies. Really a lively universe. And at the end of the evolution of stars and at the end of the evolution of galaxies are actually these black holes. And the entire drama of the universe unfolds between the beginning and end of space and time. And black holes, are sort of the end of space and time. And thinking about black holes makes you also think about the beauty of the universe, about everything that had to happen to make them, and also about the fact there are things left for us to explore, that there are things that we cannot know for sure, that place a fundamental limit of our ability to know and study. And so they make us a bit humble, actually.
When you talk about capturing a black hole, that you came up with the idea of how to capture a black hole by linking radio telescopes around the world together. Talk a little bit about this mission.
Well, when I started my physics studies, black holes were already around as ideas, as potential candidates. People were wondering and thinking that maybe in the center of these galaxies there could be really supermassive black holes, but they remained distant in all respect. And I learned that there were crazy things that are happening around black holes. Time suddenly seems to go slower. Space is stretched and curved. Space itself can rotate. All the conventional thinking of the universe turned upside down, literally, near black holes. And I always wanted to see that, right? So we started to simulate these things in computers, but I really wanted to see that. And when I was in Bonn at the Max Planck Institute doing my PhD thesis, I was working on black holes, trying to explain how they radiate. And I realized there's a certain type of light, radio light, coming from very close to the event horizon, light surrounding the darkness. And then they were also working at a certain technology, where a radio telescope around the world would be combined to produce global telescopes, huge telescopes. And then at some point, it dawned upon me, putting things together, my realization of the light, of what black holes would do to light, and using that technology. Yes, there would be a possibility to see that thing if you just go to the right frequencies, if you do the right things. But what you needed was the entire world. The entire world had to work together and go to the highest frequencies possible in radio astronomy, and all focus on this one black hole in the center of our Milky Way and potentially a few others, and then add all perspectives up together. And only that combination of the worldwide perspective will allow you to actually see the darkness that comes from the event horizon and to see what's happening there. And that was 25 years ago. And in between, there were many experiments done in Europe and the US. And we got a global collaboration together. We worked together. That wasn't easy. Working together across cultural differences is never easy. But we had people from Asia, from America, from Latin America, from Europe, even from Africa, coming together, sharing their resources, their telescopes. We put things together. And there it appeared for the first time. We saw that glowing ring of light in the darkness in the very center, just as I had always imagined, as we had calculated it. And seeing something that, was in your mind, that was a dream, suddenly become a real image. It's just such an amazing moment.
Thrilling. I'm looking at the cover of the It. I'm looking at this photograph, and it is spectacular.
Yeah, some people say it's just a glowing donut, but it's real, right? In a sense, it's radio light. It's not a picture you take with your digital camera. But it's radio picture taken, And if you know what you're looking at, you're looking at the infinite perfect darkness in the very center, the point of no return, and the light, that goes in circles around a black hole. And it's not science fiction anymore. It's reality, and that makes it so special. It's a story behind it, I think, that makes this picture special, above from the aesthetical value that it also has, for sure.
Well, it's the adventure. I mean, it is the collaborative approach that you took, that it required the world cooperating in order to see, right?
Yes.
One telescope alone can't see this. Am I hearing you correctly?
Absolutely. It's just, you need, what you need to see is a mustard seed in New York from like Germany or the Netherlands, right? From Europe. Like a mustard seed. You need to be able to read the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever across continents. And if you do this with radio telescopes, you need a telescope the size of the Earth. So really, and you can build a telescope that big, but you can connect them into a network. If you link them up in a network, you can actually synthesize in the computer something that works as if it were one big telescope. So literally, the world forced us to work together, and the world was just big enough to do this. Because if the the Earth would have been a factor 2 smaller, we would not have had a big enough telescope. The world is just big enough to do this, and that's another amazing part of the story. It could have been that it would have taken 100 years or more, generations more, to see it if the black hole would have been a bit further away or the Earth had been a little bit smaller. It's just pure coincidence that it was possible. It was just barely possible.
It's amazing, actually. And is it coincidence or is it not coincidence? I mean, there is the integration of both sides of the sort of the scientific approach, and then you have this unquantifiable spiritual or mystical side to the black hole and to what makes us connected or interconnected and interdependent. So to me, it seems like it's the perfect merging of science and spirituality.
In a way, yes. I mean, of course, I'm a hardcore scientist.
Clearly,
but I think black holes have a mythological layer, right? They stand for more than just hardcore science. When people look at the image, they, at least from the reactions I get, they are not just thinking about the equations of general relativity.
Yeah.
They think about destruction, about the end, about eternity, about what's behind, what's beyond. It raises questions, and it's so amazing that in our universe we're able to address these questions with science to a certain point, but it also that it leaves questions open. It's like looking through a tiny, hole in the door and seeing what's going on in the universe. And we're seeing there is this black hole, but we're also being told we'll probably never be able to unpack that black hole, to never be able to look inside. So the mystery remains. And I think that is so important, that the mystery remains in the universe, that we're not going to solve all the questions, because that will always, promise it will make us to search, to ask, and to wonder. And I hope that will never be over in the end.
Well, I think that notion of wonder and delight and curiosity is a foundation of happiness, in humanity, right? To be in that constant state of wanting to know more.
I think that's what makes us human.
Yeah.
To actually want to know more, to be, open and experience new things. And it's not just black holes, of course. I mean, I'm always, when I talk about black holes, when I think about the universe, about the beauty, I mean, it really has an uplifting effect on me. Every time I talk about it right now, I feel once more the wonder of the universe in me. But I must say, I'm also, sometimes we're on a little pilgrimage with my wife towards Santiago de Compostela. We're walking.
Have you done it, or are you going?
we're walking, right? So we go in steps. Unfortunately, because of Corona, we can't do large trips. But we've been doing 500 kilometers, going from Cologne towards France and along old, long rivers and Roman trade routes and you're looking throughout the year actually, and you're looking at the fields. You look at flowers. You see things blossoming. You see the fruits coming out in the fall. Every little flower is as amazing, and it always gives you new insight. So in that sense, I think black holes are not different from a beautiful flower that you see along your way. Yeah. But they tell you that there's so much more out there. I mean, already when you're on the road, you're looking at beautiful nature, and that's just a tiny little bit in this huge universe. And every little flower is to some degree a big mystery and a beauty in itself.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with Heino Falcke. To learn more about his work, please go to heinofalcke.org or lightinthedarkness.org, on Twitter at @hfalcke, and on Facebook, that page is Heino Falcke. The book we're talking about today is Light in the Darkness, Black Holes, the Universe, and Us. We'll be right back, and that is a promise.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lisa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
And we're back, continuing the conversation with Professor Heino Falcke. We're talking about the exploration of outer space and our inner worlds. Let's get back to it. Let's continue the conversation because I'm enchanted. I know I'm like a giddy child in a candy shop having this conversation with you because it blends all the things that I'm interested in and teaching me things that I didn't know. I want to talk about your belief that physics is on the verge of a paradigm shift that could forever change our understanding of the universe. Tell us more. I want to know more.
Well, we have been on an almost exponential growth of knowledge, right? Knowledge and technology have exploded, and that some of that may continue for quite some time. But we also realize there's some basic limits of our knowledge that we are encountering. The Big Bang, it's we don't know what's before the Big Bang. The black holes, we don't know what's inside black holes. But there's also the impossibility to predict everything. We always think, it just makes life better, and then we can predict things much better. The weather we can now predict for 2 or 3 days, But it turns out we'll never be able to predict weather, not climate, weather, for more than a couple of weeks. And some of that has to do with chaos theory, which tells you that at some point systems become quite chaotic, unpredictable, because you need to know the tiny little things, everything about it with extreme precision. And that's physically sometimes not possible. So certain systems are not predictable at all. And so we have to live not only with this growth of knowledge, but also with the fact that we are fundamentally limited in what we can know and what we can predict. And that makes life so interesting. We can predict a few things, but we cannot predict everything.
Thank goodness.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. I think that makes life so interesting. If everything would be predictable, it would be the most boring life you can have. If nothing would be predictable, it would be, nothing would be possible. Nothing could be planned. You couldn't be accountable, nothing. So we're living actually in a sweet spot of universes that makes life interesting, sometimes also painful, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's really life. And I think that's what we are seeing in science as well. And we're now, rattling at the doors of some of these limits, right? We're looking towards the Big Bang. We're looking at these black holes, and maybe there's something hiding behind them, inside them, that we're still going to learn, and maybe not. And so this is really I call this almost an ultimate battle, so to speak. Sorry, excuse my language here, for whether there's there is more to be learned, or whether that's the universe we have to deal with. Is everything in between? Is there some fundamental new physics hiding? Some people say there is, but it could be that we never be able to test it and find it. So I think it's an exciting phase we're going into. For the first time in our history, we're really doing physics at the edge of black holes. That's just amazing. We are, in astronomy, we're really going towards the Big Bang as close as it can. We're using world-sized telescopes. I mean, we can build telescopes that are maybe bigger than Earth itself by going into space, but all of this will have some practical and also physical and fundamental limitations. So it will be very exciting to see where science will be going. How long will this exponential growth of knowledge continue, and what are we going to do with it as humans? How can we handle all that information? We are swamped by information. We see already that, the problems there are.
Oh, and that's true.
Physics can't, becoming more and more experts of less and less things, so to speak, right? So we know infinitely more about infinitely small things, each individual.
Well, let me ask you another question about this paradigm shift, and as it relates to Einstein's theory of relativity. Will it stand up?
Yes. I mean, Einstein revolutionized our view of space and time, and that Newton has created. Newton and based on Galileo and Copernicus and Kepler, developed a theory of gravitation. And that still stands. Newton is correct. If you, just calculate, you let a rock fall, or shoot a bullet or whatever, but if you jump from an airplane. But if you calculate the details of black holes, you have to use Einstein. And that, I think, will stand because we've, verified most of the predictions of Albert Einstein. There may be modifications. And that's where it becomes interesting. At the edge of black holes, the theories of the smallest, the quantum physics, the world of quantum physics, and the theory of the biggest, the theory of general relativity, they collide. They don't rhyme, they don't add up. And there's something new that could be happening there. And we just don't know what. And there's for decades, some of the smartest people are thinking about bringing those two theories, worldviews together, the small world and the big world, and they have failed so far. Now we can measure things there, and so that could deliver some really new insights and new ideas, or we'll never find out. So it's intellectually it's very exciting, and it could lead to some exciting new ideas. But Einstein will never become irrelevant, I think, as Newton has not become irrelevant.
Well, you said something in the last segment that really got my attention about what happens at the edge of the black hole. And you talked about time changing, the sense of it. Yes. Time is relative. In the Bible you read 1,000 years are like a night watch, right? So it's just like a day. For God, time is is irrelevant, so to speak. And that's what Einstein showed. It really is different. I mean, it starts already here on Earth. If you have a clock and you shoot it into space, where the satellites are, the clock will go faster, simply because space-time changed due to curvature of the Earth. You can measure it. We do measure it. Actually, everybody using a GPS navigation system, most of us do, actually makes use of the fact that space-time is curved, that time goes faster up there, because that's what the GPS satellites show. Their clocks go faster. You just launch them. They're actually sent up there with the wrong setting. They go wrong on the ground. Only once you send them up, they're actually properly functioning, giving the right time. Amazing.
And near black holes, it becomes extreme. I mean, it's so extreme that if you see something falling into a black hole, it looks like time comes to a standstill. Everything seems to go slower and slower. And time is relative, and nothing is also happening at the same time. There's nothing that's things happening there can be things happening at the same time up there in the universe, but it takes millions of light years to reach us, and we'll never be able to know. That's also part of theory of relativity. What now happens in a galaxy a million light years away, we just cannot know. It cannot affect us.
That's
at least
huge. I mean, like to wrap one's head around that, is huge. We're nearly out of time, and I wanted to ask you a question about how your role as an ordained preacher in the church to confide, baptize, bury, and preach, what it teaches you in your life as an astrophysicist and vice versa.
It gives me a stability, and it gives me a sense of purpose and a sense of being home. And I do believe in a creator. I believe what was at the beginning of this universe is not just something, but is really someone that I can relate to, that I can pray to, that I can, talk to, and that I can expect something from. And I don't know how this works, but it's, to me, it means that all the questions I have, all the uncertainties I have, I can leave behind and know I'll be getting the answers at some point. Maybe not in this world, maybe in another world. That's one aspect. It makes me, in a way, more relaxed. I don't have to solve every question, every problem now as a scientist. Yeah. And but it also, brings me in contact with other people, right? If we are standing there and we're having supper, together, you have people of all walks of life that you don't get across at university, and that shows you the variety of life of people, and the community is also something I really, cherish. Being there, just being with people in hard and difficult times is also, it tells you, why am I doing this science? I can tell people about it. I can tell people about my hope, and it can strengthen them. Without them, I mean, let's be honest, without all these people out there, we couldn't do our job either, right? We couldn't do our job. We rely on the community to support us. To bake bread, to provide energy and everything. It's always a community effort. It's not just these 350 people across the world who did this. It's really everybody who made this happen. And that sense of community, I do get. I do get at church. Yeah.
Oh, how beautifully said. We've been talking with Professor Heino Falcke about his book, Light in the Darkness, Black Holes, the Universe, and Us. To learn more about the work and to experience this beautiful photograph that is on the cover of the book, please go to heinofalcke.org or lightinthedarkness.org. On Twitter, you can reach the professor at hfalke, and on Facebook, that page is Heino Falcke. Oh, thank you so much. You've made me a happy person today. I'm grinning from ear to ear like a kid. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Then I've done my job right. So.
Yeah, you definitely have. Here comes that pause. We'll be right back. And that is a guarantee.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness. And follow Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
And we're back, continuing the conversation about the exploration of outer space and our inner worlds. My next guest is astronaut and Colonel Terry Virts. Colonel Terry Virts earned a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics from the United States Air Force Academy in 1989 and a Master of Aeronautical Science degree in aeronautics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Selected by NASA in 2000, he was the pilot of STS-130 mission aboard Space Shuttle Endeavor. In March of 2015, Colonel Virts assumed command of the International Space Station and spent over 200 days on it. Virts is one of the stars and photographers of the IMAX film A Beautiful Planet, released in April of 2016. Terry Virts is also the author of View from Above, National Geographic, published in 2017, and he lives near Houston, but he's also the author of the book How to Astronaut, an insider's guide to leaving planet Earth. Colonel Terry Virts, thanks for joining me on the show. Thanks for getting what we're doing over here.
It is awesome to be here with you guys.
It is awesome to have you. Let's talk about what life is like in space. First of all, let's roll it back. What made you want to become an astronaut?
You know, when I was a little kid, probably 5, maybe in kindergarten, the first book I read was about Apollo, and I was hooked. And I grew up with pictures of airplanes and galaxies just covering my wall. And so from a young age, it's what I wanted to do. And as a teenager, when I was probably about 13, I read a book called The Right Stuff, which is one of the best books of all time, one of the best movies of all time. And that kind of gave me the path forward. You know, these guys had been fighter pilots and test pilots, and no one in my family knew what to do, but this book really gave me a path forward. So that I was hooked at a young age.
You know, this is a story that I have read about, or a common story that I've read about in lots of books written by astronauts or interviews that not I have performed, but that I've watched or listened to by others, that The Right Stuff was a catalyst for many. But let's talk about what it means to go up in space and the psychological and physical implications of spending extended periods of time somewhere out there.
So you mean The Right Stuff, the way Tom Wolfe described it, was kind of this characteristic of bravado and willingness to take on risk and, you know, we're going to go get it done. It was kind of the American ethos, you know, for centuries. That's what America kind of looked at itself. And you really do need that. I mean, to strap yourself to a rocket with 1 million pounds of high explosives, or the shuttle was 4 million pounds of high explosives, and launch into outer space where, you know, on the other side of that half-inch of aluminum wall is instant death. So there is some sense of, you know, this is a dangerous thing, and you need to have that right stuff mentality to go do it.
And when you did go do it, what was the experience like for you as you were catapulted out there into space, the impact on your body, which we want to get into, and how space affects one's brain, but also psychologically?
Yeah, so those are two very interesting, very different things. I'm actually hoping to make a film about the psychological impact, but your body is affected by space in a couple ways. First, and I guess the most obvious, is you're floating, so you're weightless, and so your bones and muscles tend to get weaker unless you combat that. And NASA gives us this exercise protocol. For me, it was 2.5 hours a day of aerobic and anaerobic exercise, and I did that religiously. I was very disciplined about doing that. And then when I got back to Earth, I went to rehab every day. So I took the physical exercise very seriously. And as part of that, or as my body reacted to that aspect of spaceflight, they did a scan before my launch and after my launch, and I actually lost 0.0% of my bone density.
Wow.
So the exercise protocol works. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment of the space station program. It has shown that people can live and work in space for a long time and come back, at least, you know, physically from a strength point of view, in good shape. But the much more dangerous part, and the problem that we haven't solved, is radiation, because there's just a lot of radiation out in space from our sun and other suns and other galaxies. And there's all these particles and electromagnetic energy flying around. And that's something that we haven't solved. And so after both of my space flights, I actually got skin cancer, and I had to go to the doctor and have it cut out. And so the radiation part, I think, is really the long pole in the tent for the future for leaving Earth and going to other planets.
And that's not something that most of us are even aware of, right? We hear about the loss of bone density. We hear about the impact on the eyes, you know, that,
right.
And I don't know if that was one of your experiences.
Well, so for the eye issue, I spent hours and hours and days doing studies on my own eyes. I was kind of a guinea pig, and I did a lot of ultrasound scans, some laser scans, some visual scans of my eyes, and other things. So they're trying to figure out, when you're floating, blood and fluid tends to float up in your face. If you see astronauts, they have these puffy faces. And the thought is that increased pressure, they call it intraocular pressure, can actually cause long-term problems to your eyesight. Now, for me, thankfully, knock on wood, I didn't have any problems. My eyesight changed in space. It got better for distance vision and worse for short range vision. And I think everybody has the same experience just from your eyeball changing shape. The lens changes shape, and that just happens. But then when I came back to Earth, it was the same. And I'm 52 years old. I don't need to wear glasses. I'm blessed with great eyesight. So for me, there wasn't a problem with eyesight. I think for most astronauts, the vast majority of us, we don't have problems with eyesights. Some people do need glasses, but then again, they're 50 or they're, they're 40 something or they're 50 something, or sometimes they're 60 something. So, it's not surprising that you need glasses. So there have been a handful of cases where guys have had long-term problems, and that's bad. You don't want to lose your eyesight. That potentially could be really bad, which is why we were doing those experiments. But I think that in the bigger picture, most astronauts come back and their eyesight's fine.
Talk a little bit, going back to the psychological effects, the psychological preparation to go into space, and then the experience of being up there, even though you are in a small community and you have constant communication with the world down below. I would imagine, putting myself in your shoes, that there would be some psychological effects that would be interesting.
Absolutely. So the technical aspect of training is important, and we spend years doing that. And the reality is, most astronauts, if not all astronauts, have basic technical skills, and they can fix the box if it breaks, or, they're pretty much technically competent people based on this tremendous selection process that we go through. But it's the psychological aspect that I think is a lot more important and potentially dangerous, because if you have a crew that goes south from a psychological point of view, that could be really bad. And there was a guy named Dr. Jack Stuster, who is based out in California, a great guy, psychologist, and he's done a lot of research on Arctic expeditions and compared that to space expeditions. We had an experiment called journals where, oddly enough, we kept a journal and we would send it to him and he would analyze it. He actually put numbers to feelings like happy, mad, frustrated, whatever the psychological, term was. And he analyzed basically every astronaut from the beginning of the space station program. He has this incredible treasure trove of astronauts' psychological status, because, to be honest, we're not, or personally, I'm not, and I think a lot of my crewmates are probably the same. You're just not going to be straight up with the NASA doc and with the NASA guy, because if you tell them something, then they're going to go tell your boss, and then there's a big thing, and oh my God, this is going on. So you put on your face, happy, proud, and thrilled, like in the right stuff. And but for Jack, it was in a science experiment, so no bosses got to see it or whatever. So you could be honest. And I think he really, more than anybody else, has gotten this data of how astronauts are doing. And there's some common themes that you'd expect, like sometimes there can be a crew versus the ground mentality. And so now we're very aware of that, and our mission control team really tries to stay on the crew side and work with us. I know for me personally, I had a great flight director on Expedition 43, and we worked really well together. But we know that because we've seen other astronauts have really bad experiences. So the psychological aspect is really important. And NASA tries to prepare you. They put us through this thing called NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, where you go out in an environment. For me, it was kayaking in Alaska, which sounds awesome, and it was beyond awesome, but it was also miserable too. I was on a 2-week expedition in September, and it rained every minute of the entire thing except for a few hours.
Oh gosh.
But it was still awesome, but it was like they're just trying to train you how to put yourself in a stressful or miserable situation and come through it, because in space, it's not going to be raining, but there's other stressors. So you nailed it. The psychological aspect is really important.
And how, in speaking to that psychological aspect, how important or vital is the connection and intimacy with your fellow crewmates? I mean, how real do you get?
Yeah, it's super important. And one of the things, for astronauts or for fighter pilots, when I was a fighter pilot, I remember they sent us this psychologist this one time, and she was like, you guys can't compartmentalize. You have to open up. And, we're a bunch of fighter pilots. We're like, right. Got it. Okay. Are we done yet? So in this profession, I think we have a pretty good ability to compartmentalize our feelings and emotions and just hide those somewhere where they don't ever come out. And that allows us to function, right? And we're doing these dangerous jobs. And so there's a good part about that. But at the end of the day, you're kind of keeping your feelings and thoughts to yourself. And that can be unhealthy in the long term. It's not healthy for your personal life, I can tell you that. So,
well, I want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about the interpersonal relationships with family and partner and other loved ones while out in space. I mean, you talked a little bit about the crewmates and about the necessity to have that camaraderie with the ground crew. But what about the matters of the heart? How does that work from space?
Yeah, well, it's tough.
Or
it's
doesn't
not,
it?
It's not just from space. I mean, yeah, my last mission was 200 days, so it was a long time, but it's in the big scheme of a 80-year life, or it's just a small part. It's the years and years of training beforehand and what happens afterwards. The astronaut career is a lot longer than just your time in space. Most of it is the time on Earth.
Right.
But all of those things can take a toll. There's a lot of professions like that. I mean, military, when you're deploying, police who are doing dangerous things and they go to work and they might not come home. Those types of jobs are tough on relationships, and astronauts no different. Astronaut has the added stressors of being very public. Sometimes, launch and landing are very public. And you kind of have to put on the happy, proud, thrilled, the wives in the right stuff. That was their motto. And so there's a lot of stress there on families. And at the end of the day, the astronauts get all the glory and fun and benefit. We get to fly in space and ride the rocket, and we're all American heroes. And the families have to sit there and wonder if their loved one is going to explode on the rocket, or because that happens sometimes. Unfortunately, I was involved very, very deeply in Columbia. So it's a really selfish profession, right? You get all the benefit, and the risk that you're taking gets piled on the shoulders of your family. So it is, there's pluses and minuses to everything. And that's true for being an astronaut also.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation with my guest today, Colonel Terry Virts. We're talking about how to astronaut, an insider's guide to leaving planet Earth. To learn more about Terry and his work, please visit terryvirts.com, on Twitter at AstroTerry, Facebook is AstroVirts, and on Instagram, Astro_Terry. Here comes the pause. We'll be right back, and that is a promise.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life. A boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit HarvestingHappiness.com to learn more.
We're back, continuing the conversation with astronaut and Colonel Terry Virts. We're talking about the exploration of outer space and inner worlds. Let's get back to it. Terry, we talked a little bit about the psychological implications, the logistical and interpersonal relationships, the impact is on family and loved ones when you are an astronaut and going out into space. But there's also another angle I'd love to talk to you about, and that is the spiritual angle. When you have the meta view, literally, of the world being up there, how does it impact, if at all, your spirituality or belief in God or a higher source or something more?
Yeah, that's a really important question. That it's actually one of my chapters in How to Astronaut. I've got it right here. It was called "Are We Alone? Is There a God?" and Other Minutia. So for me, I'm a Christian, and I was before I launched, and I am still. But I think that the way it changed me being in space is that I'm less of a black and white guy. It's very easy to be black and white and dogmatic and ideological, and that's just not the reality of the universe, I think. And, seeing the planet kind of made me chill out a little bit. And there's a bigger picture, and we're all here on this planet. We need to get along. So I think I'm more of I don't know how many shades of gray, but I'm more of a, not a black and white person. And when I talk about God, and there's a lot of scientists would consider themselves atheist or whatever. And from a scientific point of view, when you look at the universe and how amazing it is. I mean, I'm reading a friend of mine's book about cosmology and how the Big Bang happened and where it's going. It's such an amazingly complicated universe. Just the laws of physics that keep everything together are amazing, and I love learning about them. And then when you look at life, I did a lot of experiments on myself, medical tests. I was basically a guinea pig. I did a lot of other biology and medical tests for medicine for pharmaceutical companies. And when you look at how cells work and how life works, I just don't see how any of this can happen without a really smart person behind it all. So my philosophy, when I came away from my space flight, what struck me was I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because from a scientific point of view, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about science. Yeah. Like the science of everything is so incredibly complex. It would never just happen on its own. I'm drinking a Coke right now. It's a little metal can, right? And if you set a pile of tin on a rock for 1 billion years and let there be lightning and wind and whatever, it would never make a can, right? In 100 billion years, that would never happen. And so obviously somebody had to make it. And when you look at a single cell amoeba or the most basic life, it's, infinitely more complicated than a drink can. So that from a scientific point of view, I came away from that thinking, man, somebody really smart had to make this whole universe that we're in because it's pretty spectacular.
Well, Einstein even wrote about that. I mean, Einstein was an atheist for most of his life from reading his biography. And then at the end of his life, he said that there are some things that just can't be solved by a mathematical equation or explained by a mathematical equation.
Right. My son's a chemical engineer studying chemical engineering. And I was asking him how many molecules are in a cell, like a little amoeba you find in your pond or a skin cell in your skin or whatever, a live cell. And he said it depends. There's somewhere between millions and trillions. So but the bottom line is there's a lot. So just the odds of all of those millions or billions or whatever molecules lining themselves up to form, remember in high school biology, there's the outer layer of the cell, there's the inner protoplasm, and there's all these different cell organs. How does that happen on its own? I understand once things going, there's evolution. I get that. But, at the beginning, somebody had to make the whole thing. And I love the Alien movie was amazing. When I was a kid, that was like the scariest thing I've ever. It was like the perfect horror movie.
Yes, I agree.
Because you didn't see it. It was like this unknown thing. And anyway, but then there's been a few of them, and one of them was Prometheus. And the premises of Prometheus, say that 10 times real fast.
I wouldn't even
was that
try.
Like aliens came and made us, right? This one alien jumped in the waterfall and turned himself into DNA, and that's how life was created. But the funny thing is, what they're trying to show is God didn't do it. Aliens made life. But what they're really showing is that a creator had to create life because it didn't happen on its own. So it's kind of like by trying to show there was no God, what they were really doing is showing that there was a creator. So and again, I'm not talking from a religious point of view. I'm just talking from a scientific point of view. No, I
hear you. I mean, yeah. Well, I think you're approaching it from the bigger picture and things that can't be explained. The unknown quantum of the whole thing. It's big.
It's true. I just made a short film about space photography called Cosmic Perspective, and hopefully it'll be out. Hopefully it'll turn into a much bigger than a short film. But we were showing how photography has really space photography has changed our perspective about the world and our place in the universe. And when you look at these photographs of galaxies and from Hubble and astronauts taking pictures of the Earth, there really is this sense of this is an amazing place. I mean, the universe is an amazingly spectacular place.
It's pretty amazing. So let's go back to the alien thing about the possibility of other life out there and your musings. When you were up there, what did you think about that? Like, did you ever think like, can they see us?
Well, you think about it, and excuse me, when you're flying around the Earth, you can see satellites flying by. Like, I would take these nighttime long exposures, and when I would sit down on my laptop and look at them, I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot of satellites out there. And then every once in a while you'd see a meteorite. When you see that on Earth, you're looking up in the sky and you see a flash. Well, when you're in space, you're looking down at the planet and you see a flash down below. So I remember thinking, oh, there's stuff out there, but it's all just rocks and inanimate stuff. One time I was sleeping in the Columbus module, which is a European module, and there was just banging and pinging and banging and pinging all night long. And on another time that happened also in my crew quarters. And what was happening was the station was going through this really high, it's called high beta. There's a lot of the sun's energy. The station kind of overheats, and it's just the metal expanding and creaking and stuff. But I remember thinking, I wonder if somebody's banging on the outside of the station out there, but it wasn't. It was just the station heating up and contracting. But it was pretty, you think about it, but the reality is here, and here's the bottom line about aliens. There's so many billions of planets. You would think they're out there, right? It just would make sense. But those stars are so far away that, they're so far away. You just can't even imagine. Voyager, this probe we sent out back in the 70s to take pictures of Jupiter and Saturn and beyond. I think it's the fastest object humans have ever sent. And I did the math. If we send it to the nearest star, would take tens of thousands of years to get there. So basically it would take longer than we've had human history to get to the nearest star. And it's just a little, the size of a car. It's not anywhere to send humans there. You'd need a couple of aircraft carriers. So, there's just not enough technology to send people to other stars. And so even if they're out there, we're not going to ever hear from them, I don't think, because they're just so far away. And if we're sending signals, we've been sending these signals out ever since we invented the radio and TV. But the sun is so much louder than than local Channel 5, the local TV station, that the signal to noise ratio would never be high enough to be heard by the aliens. So, they may be out there. If they are, I don't think they just happened. I think somebody had to help make them. And even if they're there, they're so far away, it's going to take a long time, if probably never, before we'll ever have any connection with them.
Well, gee, I was hoping for something like more like definitive, but hey.
Well, I can't tell you that.
I know you can't. I'm teasing. We're almost out of time, and I would love for you to share a little bit of the minutia, like, your 3 top tips of what we need to know before we head off the planet.
So here's the most important one. And I wrote a chapter in here for space tourists, because we got these space tourist companies that hopefully next year they're going to start launching people. Take the medicine. They got this motion sickness medicine. Take it, because you're going to feel like crap for, your 5-minute suborbital flight, or if you go into orbit. So take the medicine. That's one of the things. Another thing, if you're going to leave Earth, in the Air Force, we called it chair flying, which just meant thinking through something before you do it. Think through your mission. What is it going to mean to you? What are the important things you want to do? Make the most of your time in space. Because if you get a chance to go into space, time is the most precious thing. It ends quickly. Even, I was there for 200 days and it ended quick. So you really have to make the most out of your time in space. And then another really important thing, and we'll talk about this real quick. There's this notion of plan B, and we need to go find another planet because we're destroying Earth. When you see the planet from space, man, it has been here for a long time, and it's going to be here for a long time. And we have climate change, but the bottom line, we're going to run out of gas in the next century, maybe a couple centuries. So, within a few centuries, there's not going to be any more carbon pollution. It may take, even if it takes 1,000 years, well, the Earth's going to be around for billions of years. So that's just a drop in the pond, right? So the problems that we think are really big or important are big and important to us today, but in the bigger time frame, in the bigger scale of life, they're just not that big of a deal. So one other thing that I came away from my space travels, realizing that the problems that I think are overwhelming are going to go away. So, it's in a lot of cases, you can just chill out and relax. And the important problems, you need to focus on that. Like COVID is killing people. We got to stop this.
That is real.
But that is real.
Yes.
And you can't just, every problem is not a big deal. There are some big deals, but a lot of the ones that we think about, like the Kardashians on Instagram or whatever, are probably not as important as we think they are.
Yeah. It's interesting, as you're speaking about, the minutia, the things that we need to know, I'm thinking about how we are the minutia in the great scheme of things, in the perspective of all things, from the view up there, that our problems are just a tiny little drop in the bucket in comparison to the vastness and totality of everything that is out there, planets, people, et cetera,
right.
et cetera. I mean,
you definitely get a perspective. The name of my short film is Cosmic Perspective. And so that's kind of that's the angle that I take in that movie.
And a real play, right? The cosmos, the perspective of the cosmos, and then the cosmic, the perspective from the mind and the soul as well.
Right. Yeah, that's the point of my film. Exactly.
I got it. I got it. You don't
even need to see it.
I need to see it, and you need to come back and talk more about it. Colonel Terry Virts, this has been awesome. The book we're talking about is How to Astronaut, an insider's guide to leaving planet Earth. My guest today is Colonel Terry Virts. To learn more about Terry and his work, including his film, please go to terryvirts.com, on Twitter at AstroTerry, Facebook is AstroVirts, and Instagram is Astro_Terry. Terry, thanks a million for being here. Really, this has been such good fun for me.
Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen and my amazing guests, Professor Heino Falcke and Colonel Terry Virts, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere, from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lisa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.